Hello movie lovers, welcome back to Ray's Real Review. Today we're going to be talking about Thor Ragnarok. Released in 2017 by Marvel and Disney and directed by Taika Waititi, Thor Ragnarok is the third installment of the Thor series and will see Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston returning as Thor and Loki. In addition to Thor and Loki, we will also have Cate Blanchett, Jeff Goldblum, and Tessa Thompson joining the cast. Mark Ruffalo will be appearing as the Hulk in this movie. And of course we have to mention the return of Anthony Hopkins as Thor's father Odin. The movie itself starts off after the events of both Thor the Dark World and Avengers Age of Ultron. At the end of Thor the Dark World, we believe that Loki is dead. Thor returns to Asgard and turns down the throne and leaves it to his father Odin. What he doesn't know at the time is that he's not actually talking to Odin, he's talking to Loki, who has used his illusions in order to assume the throne. Which leaves us with the big question of where is Odin and what did Loki do with him? Now, we don't find out in any of the Marvel movies up until now, but we do find out in this one. Unfortunately, I can't actually tell you where Odin is, but let's just say Doctor Strange is going to offer some direction. After that, Thor returns to Earth to help the Avengers reclaim Loki's staff in Age of Ultron. During that movie, he has a vision of the Infinity Stones and gets the impression that there is in fact a larger story at play. And Ragnarok picks up 2 years after that. Thor has had no luck in finding the Infinity Stones, but is haunted by this recurring dream of Asgard burning. There is no further information about the Infinity Stones, which makes a lot of sense because Infinity War is only a few months away. Now, we can't talk too much about Thor's dream of Asgard burning because that would ruin the story, but we can say that it is tied to the inevitable return of his sister Hela. Also called the Goddess of Death, Hela is played by Cate Blanchett. While it's easy to disregard Marvel villains as being one-dimensional, Blanchett brings across somebody whose motivations are actually quite complex, and although she does appear as evil towards the end of the movie, you can almost empathize with her character because of how she became who she is. On the other hand, her actions and her choices in this movie do make it difficult to empathize with her because, as Thor puts it, she is just the worst. Seriously, Hela is terrifying in this movie. Tessa Thompson appears in this movie as an Asgardian Valkyrie. When she first appears in the movie, she does seem a little rough around the edges. My 10-year-old daughter didn't like her at first and in fact commented that she drinks too much. As the movie carries on, you find out that her rough demeanor and her drinking habit is in fact tied to a gruesome past that she is trying to forget, and that makes her a much better character. By the end of this movie, my daughter thought she was awesome. And Jeff Goldblum brings the Grand Master to the screen. Now, you can tell that Goldblum had a lot of fun with this character, who he described as a hedonist pleasure seeker. It really brings across his charisma and his charm, and any fan of Goldblum is really going to enjoy what he's brought to this movie. Mark Ruffalo appears in this movie as the Hulk. Now, if you've watched the trailers, then you know that Hulk does in fact talk in this movie, and he talks a lot more than he does in the previous Avengers movies. There is a reason for that, and I can't get into the details because it would ruin the story, but what I can say is that 2 years have passed since Age of Ultron, and during that time, Hulk has in fact been going through his own thing. Two characters in this movie that I actually found quite funny were, of course, Korg, played by Taika Waititi, and Doctor Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch. For fans of Doctor Strange, I would say pay close attention to how powerful he's become in this movie and what that might mean for the upcoming Infinity War. One of my favorite parts of this movie has to be the fact that Thor and Loki are basically reinvented by Taika Waititi. In the previous two Thor movies, I found these characters to be almost mythological stereotypes in the fact that they were entertaining, but their characters didn't change a whole lot. In this movie, they seem to be more or less on a journey of personal change. Thor, who, as you know from the trailer, lost his hammer in this movie, actually has to deal with everything else in his life falling apart and learns a bit of humility, and if anything, becomes more human towards the end of it. And Loki, while still up to his old tricks, seems to be reevaluating his life and deciding what his priorities are and what's really important to him, so that's a nice change. In fact, one thing I was thinking about while I was watching this movie is that these two new evolved Thor and Loki characters are going to make Infinity War a very different movie than the two Avengers movies prior to this. Now, I can't say much more without ruining the movie for you, but I can say that I highly recommend this movie. It's absolutely awesome. It's one of Marvel's best. In fact, I would put it up there next to Guardians of the Galaxy. But if you haven't seen the two movies before this, I do recommend you go back and watch them. They do have a different tone than this movie, but this movie does an excellent job of wrapping up the characters before Infinity War is released. And that's my review of Thor Ragnarok. So as always, leave your comments below. Let me know what you thought about the movie, what you thought of the characters, and how they tie into the previous Thor movies, and what you think is going to be coming up in Infinity War. And of course, if you'd like to support my channel, please like, share, or subscribe. And if you'd like to support my future reviews, please visit me on Patreon. Thanks so much, movie lovers. We'll see you next time. Take care.